Welcome to the Bait and Banter Podcast, the ultimate show for everyday anglers and outdoor enthusiasts. Dive into a sea of stories, tips, and tricks as we explore the diverse fishing scenes of the Pacific Northwest. Join us and fellow anglers to share, learn, and laugh. The Bait and Banter Podcast is your hook into the world of fishing and outdoor adventures.
So, Mark, let's talk about the species that you were chasing. Did you have any experience with those prior to having to go right after them?
No, actually, all of these species were pretty new to me. So I booked a couple of days of pre-fishing ahead of time, hoping that I could sort of up my game. But that kind of went to hell once I saw what kayaks we were working with.
What kind of kayaks did you see that you were going to work with?
Right. So, I expected, maybe some second-tier Hobie knockoffs, something like that. Honestly, the first kayaks that were provided to us and the ones that we were expected to fish the contest with were, honestly, they were Chinese knockoffs of department store knockoffs. It was terrible.
They send you out there in a sun dolphin.
They were pedal drives. They were prop style, but they had these big, wide, low profile rudders, and everything was made out of plastic. Nothing was strung tight. It really wasn't made for ocean fishing. Honestly, these would have been right at home in a small pond or some static water like that. But in the ocean, the guys that I joined for the pre-fishing, they made it in an hour the first day before their kayaks either lost their rudders completely or their drives seized up. And so we went back and we took a look at them and tried to revamp them as best possible. I was still working on mine, and they went back out. They made it about 2 hours in, and all of the rudders failed. They wound up having to get a panga to drag them back to shore because they were stuck in a left-hand turn circle. They couldn't even paddle back because the rudders were forcing them to the left.
Holy cow, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, so we disassembled the entire rudder assemblies and realized that things were a little loose and we could improve their setup a bit. So we did that. I took it out for a test run through the surf to see how I'd make it in and out. It seemed okay. But then we put a little bit of pressure on them, and the rudders failed again. And what we realized was that the spline that the rudder control was mounted on was made out of plastic with a thin metal faceplate. That's the flat part that's sort of the key that guides it. Well, that metal faceplate was rounding out the plastic hole in the handle. So at some point, basically, you were just free spooling around the spline with the control arm, and the rudder would just kick over to one side, and there it was. That's all you got.
Wow, that don't a little bit risky, to say the least, anyways, huh?
Absolutely. So what was supposed to be 2 days of pre-fishing for me and 3 days of pre-fishing for a couple of the other guys turned into 3 days of debugging, working with the supplier of the kayaks to get something better. And eventually then doing a last-minute rush to set up 14 kayaks for our team last second that dropped in the day before the contest.
Oh, wow. So you basically went out there, I mean, in a sense, blind, other than being able to maybe look up some information on YouTube or read about them a little bit, structure-wise, what you're looking for in those areas, or talk to the local guides, or what?
So, being Team USA, where overkill is still kill, what we did is we had a couple team members who are expats who actually live in Costa Rica.
Okay.
They live in Jaco, which is not too far away. And they had been pre-fishing it for the prior 2 weeks and feeding back the intel, giving us marks for where the fish were at, letting us know what the conditions were, which side of the bay we would want to fish, all the really important stuff. So, when we landed, everybody had a reasonable idea of where to head to do what. So That was a great head start.
You guys all came together, you made a plan, and you basically said, you go for this, you do that, and then all you guys, tournament day, was it 1 day or 2 days?
It was 2 days.
So you guys would
and just like any battle plan, as soon as the first shot was fired, it all went to hell, and we all just sort of figured out what we were going to do.
Right. So it still sounds like a ton of fun. I mean,
oh, absolutely,
ton of fun. Did you see anything that really will stick to your mind as far as memories go when you're out there on the kayaks?
Oh, yeah. So the last day of the tournament, I was not a high scorer on the team. I was putting points on the board, but I was nowhere near the top performers.
Right. I think I saw you were in the 20s.
Yeah, overall, across all the teams.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway from it was I wasn't last on the American team. In fact, there were 4 people below me. So I'm going to take that.
Heck yeah. Win. No, when I saw the standings, you were you were above halfway, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You were way up there still. I mean, for going to a fishery and never fishing it, and then you still did great. I mean, sheesh, that's awesome. How many people can go someplace and not know a fishery and then end up doing well? That doesn't happen very well. Usually, you got a learning curve. You know, it takes you a minute to get them down.
And that showed in the results. Number 1 and number 2 overall were the 2 expats who lived there, who had been pre-fishing it for the prior 2 weeks.
Well, it's too bad you didn't get a pre-fish. That would have been fun. So you just fished the 2 days. You didn't fish any other days. How long were you there total?
So I was there for 5 days total. I guess it's actually 6 days total because of travel time.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent, a fair amount of time at the beach, but normally I had a wrench in one hand, pliers in another hand, zip tie in my teeth, and was trying to figure out where to stick the duct tape.
Right. So, I mean, it was fun. It was an experience, but you were definitely working to keep, all you guys were probably working to get on your feet to be able to fish and do things.
Absolutely. So already in country were Alan Sansano, Robert Field, Annie Nagel, and David Elgas, Boogie D. So I joined them a couple of days after they'd arrived. And I was terribly disappointed to find out that they'd spent almost no time fishing. They were just dealing with kayak issues. And that's the way it went until contest day. We were just trying to dial them in. We'd take them out for a run, come back in, dial them in some more.
You were saying not everybody was using the same kayak. There was all kinds of different boats that were...
Yeah, the Costa Rica team were using their boats because they're in country.
Personal stuff,
right? Team Mexico, I think one of the guys had his own boat. I'm not sure if he was an expat living in Costa Rica or what, but he had a Hobie. And then most of the guys were relying on the kayaks, the same kayak company as we were for the rentals. And initially, that kayak company tried to pass off the same kayaks that we had soundly rejected onto the Mexican team. So I talked to one of their members one day and I said, man, those just are not safe. I go, demand some other kayak. Yeah. And he thought I was just kind of, I don't know, pulling his leg or what have you. But he went out for a couple hours. He came back in. I could hear him before he came through the surf screaming about how fucked up that experience was and wanting a different kayak. So, to the credit of the rental company who, I mean, their main clientele for rentals like this are just going to be tourists who are going around on small little rivers and stuff. They stepped up. They went deep into their inventory, pulled out the next level set of kayaks and gave it to the Mexican team. I was a little disappointed because they got slightly better kayaks than us, but in the end, we were able to get out and fish. We were safe. We were able to get back to the beach.
And you guys won.
And we won. Hell yeah.
So there you go. That just speaks volumes right there. I can't imagine the frustration amongst all the guys on the teams that had to deal with that.
Absolutely. But, it's kind of funny because it drove some international unity. It was amazing. We all knew we were in the same boat. There was no compunction to not go over to a guy's kayak and take pictures for him when he pulled up a nice fish, even though he was from a different team in a different country.
Right.
Even though we didn't speak the same language, you can pantomime what you need.
Yeah. That's the awesome thing. Once a kayak angler, always a kayak angler. You're very seldom, like I tell everybody, it's not very often that you meet somebody that's an absolute ass. I mean, there are some of those guys out there that just won't talk to anybody, won't stick their nose up. But there's not very many of them.
That's the bass guys.
Yeah, it can be. It absolutely can be. Describe for everybody exactly what it was you guys were after. In other words, like if it was a 8 species tournament, did everybody have to catch 8, or you just over team wise the biggest 8 or biggest single number of any species turned in? How'd that work?
Right. So it was a 17 species, multi-species contest. Initially, it started out and there were no limits on the number of any fish that you caught. In negotiations with the group that was putting it on, we made them realize you don't want to review 200 photos of tiny little groupers or what have you. So they started putting limits on it. It was a maximum of 3 of each species. It didn't matter what size it was, as long as it was of the species, and you got your points for that. And the most difficult species, like the sailfish, were the highest ranking. That was 100 points. But when you get down at the low end, things like needlefish came in at, I think, 3 points. And then they were stacked in between those. There were bonuses for multiple species. So once you got to 3 species, it was a 10-point bonus. And then every additional species after that added another 5 points to your score.
Right. So if you could only submit 3 of each species, so let's say somebody wasn't thinking and they submitted 3 18-inch groupers, that typically can get way bigger. That's it. They can't. That's their thing. They can't submit. They go and catch a 40-incher. They can't submit that one.
Well, they could submit the 40-incher and not submit one of the smaller ones. It wasn't about size in this contest. It was just about getting your species.
Okay. So were there teams then that there must have been teams that just couldn't find the species then?
It was surprising. I think we probably only caught, across all the teams, we probably only caught maybe half of the total available species on the list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not everything was available. So like yellowtail, I don't think anybody saw one. I saw the only billfish in the competition. And that was just from, a little bit of a distance as it was working through a bonita pile. There were a lot of fish that were on the menu, but they weren't in the bay, so we just didn't get them.
So you're saying in the bay must be a really big bay. You're not getting out into the open water?
Yeah. Well, the end of the bay is 2.5 miles out on the south side. So it was pretty easy to get out to open water. And yeah, you could get out there and fish that. We were mostly fishing structure, though. And the maps for the area didn't show a whole lot of structure very far offshore. There were a couple of guys who pulled around live baits or dead baits way offshore, hoping for a sailfish to come by or something else big to pick up their bait. But for the most part, everybody stayed within the confines.
Right. Do they have like wahoo and stuff there?
They do have wahoo. That was actually one of the target fish, but nobody picked one of those up. Or mahi.
Nobody got a mahi, huh?
Nobody got a mahi.
Wow. Those things are usually, when you find one, you find wolf packs, gobs of them.
Yeah, but we didn't find any, so there were no wolf packs.
So did they right. They I know that different pelagics come in at different times of the year. Was that the case with why there wasn't those other fish?
Yeah, so this was the sort of the beginning of the pelagic season for that bay. So I think that's why, I saw that one billfish, but we didn't see a whole lot of yellowtail or wahoo or mahi. They were still working their way up by Hako, the town of Hako that's several miles away. They just hadn't made it to the bay yet.
Okay. I remember when I was fishing in Mexico, we went fishing for yellowtails, and it was that way. They just hadn't come down around the tip of Baja. They were around the corner. You could go like 15 miles away in the boat and you would get into them, but where we were, they just weren't there. We didn't see any until we went around the corner and got up, and actually the water temperature went up, I think 2 degrees or something while we were there, and that's where we saw the yellowtail when I was there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how they do those. Now, did they just, we know this was like put together pretty quickly. Somebody just decided they wanted to do it then. Let's have a thing and let's go to Costa Rica. How do you get the logistics of that's got to be a nightmare. I mean, like, here's where everybody's going to stay. Here's where we're going to do this. Here's where we're going to do that. And to just slam it together.
So the contest organizer had put together some pretty good bones for it. So he had a resort chain lined up so that there was a place for people to stay when they flew in. And then they had another hotel in this resort chain that's right at that bay. And then we all transferred there and stayed there through the contest. So, it had some decent bones in place. Unfortunately, the organizer had been obviously talking with someone at corporate who didn't flow down the information to the local resort.
Uh-oh.
So they really did not like having us at the resort. The resort itself was a terrible experience.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So that resort caters more towards local Ticos who like save up half the year and take their family there for 3 days and they party it up, right? They're not equipped to handle a bunch of international travelers who are going to be going in and out, a dozen times a day to get anywhere. So they weren't staffed for it. They didn't know to expect it. And, the resulting service that we got was pretty poor.
Was it like, again, when I was down in Mexico, even in Belize, when I was at Belize, everything was pretty, I don't want to say guarded, but I definitely saw a lot of people with M16s walking around, especially in Mexico. It wasn't so much there was people walking around with M16s. It was just like they herded you. You literally were only allowed in places.
Right. So this resort liked to consider it a 5-star resort. Definitely not on an international standard, but for a local Tico setup, it was a 5-star resort. They like to keep the locals out from the resort. So there were a lot of guards around. They had a lot of protocol around coming into the resort and leaving the resort. And I don't blame them for that. I mean, the people who really like going to this resort appreciate the fact that basically they're secluded from everybody else and all their needs are met and it's an all-inclusive and it's a great time for them.
Right. And so that's why they weren't ready for you guys to go in and out, because that's probably a kind of a thing for them.
Their protocol is every time a car comes in, they take a video all the way around the car And so you can imagine what it's like when you've got 40 competitors from around the world trying to use these gates, and they're still trying to get the tour buses in and all of this stuff.
Oh, I can imagine the guards were pissed.
Oh, yeah.
Again? How many times
So
you
we
come
were
in?
smart. We made friends with a couple of the key guards. One gentleman, David, actually wound up becoming a real asset to us. He understood what was going on. He felt kind of bad because he saw that we were getting screwed in what we were trying to do. He fishes.
Oh, wow.
And,
there you go.
So
another angler.
When he was working that gate from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we got gold star service.
Nice. So to keep track, you said you guys were taking photos. So was it an inch thing, or you just had to take a picture of a fish and submit it? Or did you use like an app like TourneyX or something? Or what'd you do there?
So it's pretty interesting. The event was an eco-friendly event. No fish were harmed in the contest, right? Except maybe the bait fish. So what they expected of us was they wanted video of us releasing the fish. And in that video, we needed to show the sticker that they made for us in our kayaks. And that actually was pretty simple to pull off. So you'd get close to your end game, you'd turn on the camera, you'd pull the fish up, hold it out in front of you so that your camera got it. You'd look down at your label, throw the fish in the water, and you were golden. And then when we submitted them, everybody had like 10 or 15 second clips, so it went pretty quickly.
It sounds a lot like what they were doing here with the walleye stuff. And the walleye boat guys, they were on an app called Fish Donkey, and that's what they had to do. They had a video, they'd measure them, and then they had to video them turning them loose for proof.
Oh, great, yeah.
They don't. That series quit. Finally, my hips are better, and I can finally go fish, and I could actually have competed in that against the boats because it's a CPR thing, catch, photo, release.
Right.
And now that my hips are better and I'm good to go, they quit doing it. So they don't do that any longer, but that's the way it goes. So you guys, again, just strategy-wise, you said that you guys talked strategy as far as what you were going to do, but in the end, you guys got out there and you just ended up doing whatever. Is that pretty much?
Pretty much. So we had weekly meetings for 2 months before the contest. From the point that everybody was tagged and said, yes, I'm going, we put together a Google Teams setup. We were sharing files and information, and we would have these strategy sessions. It was funny because it was supposed to be 1 hour each week, but it's a bunch of people who love to fish talking about fishing.
Right.
So, they turn into 2 and 3 hour meetings.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting because, the guys who have a lot of experience with the species we were going after were sharing tons of information on gear and technique. And they put together gear guides for the guys who weren't used to it. We talked about how local strategies for catching fish related to how we were fishing for these other fish and how you find them and so forth. So it was a master class in what you need to use, where you need to find these fish, that sort of thing.
I love learning and hearing those kind of things. Just anything that has to do with fishing, I get so absorbed in it. It's just, I love it. It's that kind of stuff is so much fun.
It really was a dream to have one-to-one contact with these guys who really are setting the standard for kayak fishing for this in these types of waters, and having them share their info, and more importantly, asking you about what you currently do, and then helping you figure out how to translate that into how you fish for these other species.
Right. I could see that. Make it compatible with what you're doing, or what you do rather, so that you have an easier time of understanding, or you can go out. It makes it easier for you to be able to think outside the box and adjust to different situations the fish are doing there.
Right.
What was the most memorable thing, or was there anything that was you'll always remember that you had got to see or experience while you're out there in a kayak?
Absolutely. So there were two things. One was there were howler monkeys that lived in the hills above the bay, and you would be paddling out and you would hear this Jurassic scream from the trees above you, and it would just echo through the bay, and it was totally awesome. For people who knew what howler monkeys sounded like, it just put a smile on your face. For people who didn't know what howler monkeys sounded like, they were freaked out.
The boogeyman was coming
over. Yeah, absolutely. So the other memorable piece for me was I had this moment on the last day of fishing where the tides were starting to change. My fishing plan had gone all to hell, and I just hadn't gotten the species that I wanted to get. And I was having this moment of sort of recovery where I'm saying, okay, this is just fishing. What do I like to do? How do I normally fish, and how can I apply that here? And I was getting ready to go out and jig just like I do on the reefs here to try to stay low and bump the bottom and try to get something to come up. And as I'm putting that plan together, I can see the tuna birds coming in, kind of zigzagging their way towards me. So I know that the bonita are on their way. And I grab my light gear, and sure enough, the bonita start bubbling, and I cast into the bonita. And while I'm retrieving that first cast, I see the bill of a sailfish come up through the bonita and slash through them. And while I did not make use of that moment, I tried to reach for my big gear, but that moment only lasts for a split second.
Right.
Just the vision of that bill coming through and slashing down into the feeding bonita was just amazing.
I get that. I again, when we were in Hawaii, we were fishing and we were dragging a live bait around, and I hooked a marlin. It bit like it was like a perch. Like the thing hardly pulled on anything. And I picked it up and started to let it take a little bit of line. We're like, it doesn't feel like it's very big. And then I went ahead and locked up the drag and pulled back on it, and that thing came to life. And it took off just like you said. And then it started this jumping, and it tail walked from one side all the way across the horizon, all the way around us. And it was going like a rocket. And I'll never forget that. That's just before it broke the line. The line got, It was braid, it was loose, it dug into the center of the reel, and it snapped. But this thing, before it did that, it pulled me off my feet twice in the boat.
Awesome.
It was something else. But to see that thing going across the water like it did, it's got to be like the same. It was amazing. I had never seen that before. I know, several people have, but I had never experienced that. So I can only imagine being able to be close to a billfish like that and see it slash through the bonita would be pretty exciting in itself. No wonder, it's a person be looking at that for a second and go, oh my God, look at that. You're just enjoying it. And they go, oh, grab my rod.
Exactly.
And then it's too late, So describe just briefly, just a real brief description. You don't have to get detailed, but describe what your morning started out like, how your launch was. You went out and you fished, coming back in, and then break it down so we can go into the weigh-in, or what I would call a weigh-in, award ceremony, whatever you want to call it. What would start with the morning?
Yeah. So again, it's Costa Rica, so nothing really goes to a clock. In the mornings, those of us who had rental cars, in order to make sure that our team members could get there in time to get everything set up and ready to go, we'd start shuttling them at like 4 a.m. So we'd shuttle people in their gear out to the beach, and they'd get their kayaks set up, get their plan ready for the day. Once everybody was shuttled to the beach and we were ready to go, the last guys would launch. Our first stop every day was for bait. There's a little fishing village in this bay, which means that there's not a ton of huge fish, and there's not as many fish as like you'd find at Los Buzos, but there are still significant fish stocks out there. So we'd stop at this little fishing village. We would jig around the pier where all the bait fish come in to feed on the scraps. We would load up on those in our live wells, and then we'd hook one and take off for wherever we were going to fish. The fishing would go on. The first day, I believe it was 8 hours, and I think the second day was 12 hours, which is really long.
That makes for I've doing a couple other ones. You always think, man, I want the tournament to be longer. You hit that 8 hour mark, and at 6, you're thinking, whew, man, I'm like, how long? Oh my gosh, we still got 2 hours left. So I can't imagine 12. 12's got to really, when you come in, you had to have been spent.
Yes, absolutely, completely spent.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, we'd head out, we'd do our fishing. It's funny because I remember people asking, hey, do you have enough water? Over and over again, or hey, do you have snacks? And I was asking other people that it's dangerous to be out on the water for that long in really hot conditions and not be hydrated, not have any energy to go. One of the guys, Dakota Dunmeyer, he actually wound up coming to heat prostration on the second day. What happened was, he felt it coming on, and it was obvious his electrolytes were down and he didn't have enough water. So he made this heroic push to the beach, and I mean freaking heroic. He got out of his kayak and he fell down, but he touched the beach. So all of the fish he'd landed counted.
Oh.
And that's why he made that heroic push.
Oh, but he knew he was done. He knew he was done. Yeah, that's dangerous because that's really dangerous. You could die from that. I mean, you go to heat exhaustion, straight to heat stroke, or that's not not good. Plus, when you're out there in the ocean and you're suffering from the heat like that, you're not thinking straight either. Normally, you're not. It's like a reverse hypothermia, if you will. Hypothermia is the same way. You start doing goofy things. You start thinking you're warm when you're not. Yep. You start doing all this stuff. Well, being in the hot or the heat like that, you're cooking your brain. You're not thinking straight either. So that's definitely a risk.
He was smart enough to communicate his condition to his team members. So, people were keeping an eye on him. People on the beach knew to keep an eye out for when he came in. And when he collapsed coming out of the kayak, there were guys there to grab him and drag him up.
How far did he come in from?
I think he had been fishing about 3 miles out.
Oh man, I bet that was a brutal return. It probably felt like it was taking a year for him to get back. 3 miles for us when we're out takes us what, an hour?
Yeah.
Hour pedal?
Now, imagine doing this in a kayak where your top sustainable speed is 2.5 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh, it's just double because Will sustained 4.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Was he sick afterwards? I mean, like, did it really
hammer him?
He was
vomiting.
Yeah, he was bad
for hours after that.
Yeah, he was absolutely heat exhaustion.
So we set him up in actually, I was on the water at this point, but my wife was there and some other people, and they set him up in the local cantina on a chair, relaxing. The locals wanted to feed him like sugary drinks and stuff like that, and my wife had the forethought of saying, "Hey, what is it that you need in this moment?" And he's like, "I need electrolytes, I need fresh fruit, and I need water."
Yes.
And so she ran up to the store,
no alcohol,
just around the corner, and brought those back.
Nice on Jarissa. Yeah, it's kind of cool that did all the anglers' wives get to go?
No, there were a few of them. I would say there were 4 wives there, and Jarissa, right? She's anti-aloha, right? So it didn't matter if it was the wife of someone from Team America or the wife of someone from Team Mexico or who you were. If you needed a ride to the resort, if you needed to figure out what the best snack midday was, if you needed a drink, she was on it. She was a real ambassador as much as any of the other people out there were.
And that's awesome because definitely we need as many great ambassadors as we can get, especially, for our sport. So you're out there. Unfortunately, homeboy had to race in. What happened from kind of there? Where you go?
Yeah, well, that day wasn't great. I scored more points than I had on the first day, so I had that to be satisfied about. But honestly, when I came into the beach, knowing that I had just fished my last hour of this contest that I'd prepped so long for, and I hadn't gotten any of the premier species, I had this moment when I got up on the beach. Jarissa came down. She wanted to tell me about her day, and I needed her to just give me a couple of minutes to take it in. So I just sat down and I reviewed all the challenges I had and the successes I had and this beautiful scenery, and I found my peace with where I was in the contest that day.
Right. And that's important as an angler to be able to do that kind of thing, because not every trip is the trip you want it to be. Sometimes they're fantastic, but there's a lot of times that they're not so fantastic. And being able to, do that. But in a situation like what you guys were in, where it is seemingly more meaningful rather than just the regular fishing trip. I mean, had you ever been to Costa Rica before to fish prior to that?
Not to fish. I've been there for surfing trips.
Surfing. Yeah. Like, what was the stress level or anxiety level a little bit about, or how much pressure did you put on yourself or did the other anglers put on themselves? Some people get in a situation where they're competing and it completely changes them. They go from being either laid back and just kind of chill to like so intense that you can't hardly be around them. It's just crazy.
Right.
So, I mean, but for you, was there ever a moment where you were like, had to grab your thoughts, calm yourself down? I guess there was, because you said you had to say, "Hey man, I'm just fishing. What would I do?" What was the pressure like?
Yeah, so the pressure in the days before the contest were probably the worst, because we knew that we had another 9 or 10 people coming in that were going to rely on us having set up all their gear and gotten it ready so that they could actually fish that first day. And it looked like we weren't going to be able to do that. So it was very frustrating. It took a lot of hard work. On that last day, when we finally got some Vibe 110s that are a pretty reasonable kayak.
Right. I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah. So once we got those and we knew that we were going to be safe and the setup was going to be okay, we all kind of took a collective breath, took a shot of local rum, and started smiling.
Nice.
Rum heals all things.
Yes, it does. So you get out, you've been fishing for 2 days, you come back in, you're on the beach, you've come to peace with yourself over your accomplishments and the different things. And so where do you go from there? What happens after that?
When I came up the beach, it takes a couple of minutes before the guy's ready to review your film. And then there's a lot of people who want to have their film reviewed. So there's a lot of downtime. So for myself, what I did was I stripped my kayak. I brought it up to a point where it could be loaded on the truck and all that. I kind of cleaned up after myself. And then something that Team America had been doing consistently was I looked around for trash that was on the beach, and I started picking it up because,
absolutely.
I mean, I was very grateful they shared their beach with us.
Yes.
Um,
Leave it better than you found it.
Yeah. The telling moment was I've got an armful of trash and I'm walking towards the trash can, and there's a couple of the old fishwives sitting on a bench, and they had been sort of scowling around, but one of them nudges the other and points me out, and they all looked over and they all smiled and started nodding. And it's like, oh, I just did my ambassadorship duty right there, because they knew we were taking care of their home.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want to? Some places as beautiful as that. I mean, I guess if you live there, you get jaded, and so you don't see it as what everybody else that shows up and sees it. I mean, it's kind of like going to Hobuck. That place is gorgeous, and you want to take care of it and do different things, but also you get to go in there, and like you said, can be a lot of garbage on the beach and stuff from just people that are throwing their stuff down. I've picked up a ton of garbage, especially over by the Coast Guard station. In fact, I was just there the day after the 4th of July. Somebody had a bunch of 4th of July stuff, because there was so much garbage, but there was some people that were picking stuff up. They were going on the beach, so to do that. Yeah, same kind of thing. Yeah. So you said you were out for 12 hours. That the second day. So did they give you guys the night to rest, or did you have to go to the awards ceremony right after you got your kayak loaded? You had to have been just exhausted.
Yes and no. It's pretty interesting. So you get the adrenaline dump, but you have the endorphin surge at the end of the contest, where you're kind of numb to everything, and it's okay. You can still move around pretty well. The awards ceremony was only maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after we got off the water. Jerissa was meeting. It didn't matter what country you were from. She was greeting anybody who wanted to step up with a shot of rum. And we had 3 shot glasses. And it was like she was trying to bring people from the different countries together for photo ops and so forth. And then, Team USA was kind of lucky because we actually did get some sponsors to drop gear for us. So they dropped things like, batteries and life vests and things like that. So we made it a point to find someone on one of the other teams who was about your size. We gave them our life vests and told them to enjoy it. And it was funny, we're doing shots with them, we're trading gear. It was really a big party, and it didn't matter who was up on the podium. Everybody was clapping.
And that's pretty awesome. I saw that post where they showed you guys giving the PFDs away to the other people. I'm assuming that they were a mandatory thing throughout the event anyways.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would have supplied them, but we actually had Kokatat kick down their top of the line PFDs to us.
Oh, nice.
And what better feeling than to take really good gear and give it to someone you've been competing against for the last couple of days.
Oh, and Kokatat's got to love to be able to be part of that as well. I would assume those guys would love to see that kind of thing,
Oh yeah.
Some of us here in England, we're a little more, I guess, privileged to be able to afford to purchase or to be pro staff position, get a huge discount on things, to where a lot of these other places probably don't get that. And, even when I was in Belize, the stuff that I saw those guys using was, really subpar to our subpar.
Yeah. They were doing what they could with what they had.
Yes, absolutely. So that's cool that you guys were able to give that kind of stuff away. So the weigh it was about an hour and a half, you said, and they stood up there, give you guys medals.
Correct. So they announced, so Guatemala was supposed to be there as well. I don't know if it was cost issues or there was some international issue between Costa Rica and Guatemala, but the team didn't show up. So it wound up only being 3 teams competing. It was Costa Rica, Mexico, and the USA.
Oh,
and
that's sad.
So they started off with the individual winners. Mm-hmm. Third place was Team Mexico, Jonathan, I think Morales. And then second place was from Team USA, a gentleman named Lance Clinton, one of the expats who lives there. And then first place was Guy Marsh. And Guy Marsh had some just amazing fish. Interestingly, Guy had moved to Costa Rica just like a year and a half, 2 years ago, looked up Lance and begged him to show him how to fish the local waters from a kayak.
Then went out and beat him.
Lance got all credit for Guy's first place win.
Nice.
Then they went on to the team medals. So they announced third place first, that was Costa Rica, and then second place, which was Team Mexico, and then first place, Team USA. And
so just real quick, Costa Rica took third place?
Took third place. Consider this, though. Team USA I mean, as you stated, we're kind of overprivileged.
Mm-hmm.
We get to travel and fish. We get all sorts of media, all sorts of gear. We did it like it was a tactical strike by sending people in early, collecting up all the information, making sure everybody's set up. Team Mexico is actually partially sponsored by the government, so they covered a lot of the costs for these guys to get out there.
That's
and
awesome.
Team Mexico has places like La Paz and Cabo that they're fishing on a regular basis. So,
oh, yes.
They're pretty experienced. Team Costa Rica doesn't have a whole lot of support. It's just really stoked kayak fishermen who happen to live in that country, kayak fishermen and women who got a chance to come out to this bay, which most of them had probably never been to before.
Now, you said men and women, so there was some females on the teams?
There were females on all the teams.
Nice. That's awesome. That's good to see. Great to see. It's something that I don't feel we do. We see a lot of female kayak anglers. There are some, but there are really not that many. And it's not because, I don't think it's because they can't do it, because the ones that do it do very well at it. But I just think they're just not interested, or a lot of the ladies just think I don't want to do that, just don't want to do it.
Right.
So, but I know there's some amazing female anglers out there.
On Team USA, Elsa Flores was amazing. She is a freaking animal, and she really got on it with pretty much every species.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I like it when the ladies get out there and kick some tail. Like I was saying,
She
Christine
definitely kicked my tail.
you got women like Christine Fisher. She runs the guys into the ground in the bass stuff. Plus, she goes and fishes a lot of different other things. And then locally here, we have a couple of really great female anglers. Jessica Coyle, she's a local gal. She lives in Yakima, and she's a fly angler out of the Kayak. And holy smokes, is she can fish, man. She's a good angler. Right. I'm going to have her on here in the next couple of weeks. She's on the native team, and I like to see when the gals get out there and do it. It's good to see, because we don't have a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you got it all done. You stayed a couple days extra, it looked like, while you were there.
Actually, no, we bailed the very next day. So,
oh, did you?
The end of the contest, we tore our gear down. The kayaks were taken away. We did the awards ceremony, went back to the hotel, packed all our stuff up, caught some sleep, and then headed out to the airport.
How long of a flight or whatever was that?
Total travel time was maybe 8 hours, but with some layovers in between. It wasn't a terrible journey.
Not terrible. I was reading an article on it, and they had actually talked about the possibility of having a kayak fishing in the Olympics. Was that ever kind of talked about with you guys at all?
Absolutely, that was discussed. That's a possibility, but there are a lot of possibilities for what could become Olympic events. Mm-hmm. The hardest part of that is just going to be the fickleness of venues and how do you get an international group of fisher people onto a level playing field, being able to all effectively fish for the same kind of fish. Because I'll tell you, the fish that we go for in the Northwest are significantly different than the fish that go for even in like Southern California, different than what they're fishing for in Sea of Cortez.
Absolutely.
And you get over to Europe, and I mean, you're talking eels and pouts and things like that.
Yeah, they don't have things at all, hardly.
Yeah.
But then you get places like Australia, those guys I think would be a reckoning force.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Those
guys are animals.
Yeah, big time. Is this something that's going to happen every year now? Is this was brand new? Is this was a test run, or are they going to do it again?
So the goal is to make this an ongoing thing and have a consistent Team USA team competing in both the qualifiers and the World Championship. World Championship for this year is coming up in Spain in October. The top 3 people on the team advance to. They sort of get the pass to go to Spain. Mm-hmm. And then we've got some qualifying events where other anglers are going to get their chance to compete as well. They'll be able to compete in the World Championship. As far as making it an ongoing effort, that's part of the reason for getting the backing of U.S. Angling. They're sort of the clearinghouse for all events, all fishing events in the U.S., and they also sponsor international fishing. So they sponsor, and by sponsor, I mean they set up the infrastructure on which you can build your team and support it for international bass fishing, a lot of freshwater stuff. They're learning from us because the kayak angling world, we've kind of figured out how to work sponsors to best effect to make sure that we're set up. Mm-hmm. I would have thought a contest bass fishing would have done the same thing, but no, because those are money contests and it's the really big money winners who get their sponsorship. In kayak angling, as long as you're a top producer and people are watching what you're doing,
yep,
the sponsors want you on their team.
They do. They come look for you. That's I've never asked for any stuff that that I've done, I've always been approached. So it makes me, it makes me feel good that you do that. But I assume they break it down into regions, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So how are they going to have qualifiers in each region, like somebody else in the Pacific Northwest? Because I guarantee you there's going to be people that go, man, I could do this. I mean, I'm one of them. I would go to California for an event or whatever, or have one up here. You were saying before that, we needed to get the ORC back up and going again. And how would we just say like, hey, we got this event. This is how many people show up. Would you guys be interested in? I mean, how do you think that would work as far as becoming a qualifying event?
Right. At this point, I know of 3 qualifying events. One is the Gimme Shelter tournament in Shelter Cove, California.
Right.
And that's one of the longest going contests in the USA. And so that was a shoe-in for this year. It's going to be for the entire West Coast. But what I'd really like to see is for us to get the ORC going in earnest again, the one that used to go out of Depot Bay. It's pretty centrally located for both Oregon and Washington fishermen.
Yep. It's a great fishery.
It has and it's a multi-species event. There's a lot of different fish out there you can be going after, and that's the same sort of format that this Pan Am tournament was.
I wonder, because we do have the Sunset Bay Angler of the Days kind of become the only one. I wonder who a person would approach rather to maybe talk about doing that, or even how a person would get into being able to set that back up.
So, if it's someone local, they probably are within 3 degrees of me. They'd probably reach out to me, and I would hook them up with the committee that selects those contests. Honestly, I've already talked about the Coos Bay Angler of the Day with these guys. We'd really like to get something a little more central, a little farther away from Shelter Cove, because that one's pretty close, but the species distance and all of that. But honestly, if that's what it takes, that'll be the one. I've also talked with Peter Kloss about bottom fishing tournament that he puts on up in Nia Bay. It's a fairly new event. It doesn't have a ton of turnout yet, but I think that has real possibility because of the number of species up there.
And honestly, the area up there is, if you're doing a CPR thing, kind of like what you did, so you're not killing, then you could, when you do catch say a quillback on the inside, take a photo of it and turn it loose real quick. I can guarantee you the quillbacks and the coppers and all those babacos or basios, however they say that, they're all bigger on the inside than they are on the outside, because they have fished the heck of the outside. That's why I've started all of my bigger fish have all come from the inside these days. Right. Yeah, that's where I've just been going. I've
definitely gained a new appreciation for the inside after finding your flounder marks and then realizing all the structure in there and the fish that hang out on them.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of structure. All of it's because that 120, we're not allowed to fish past the 120 foot mark. And the 120 foot mark on the inside is within a mile, even a half mile or quarter mile sometimes of the bank. The 120 foot mark on the Hobuck side is like 2.5 miles out there. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Everything's a lot closer, and there's a lot of really good fishing. The only thing you have to deal with on the inside, and we do deal with it on the outside, but I feel like the current's way stronger on the inside.
It is. It really requires you to plan your trip, because you don't just choose any random time to paddle out there. You get swept out to sea.
No, you'll end up clear off or way inside, or it's just and the current, it just will ruin your fishing. I know that when me and my cousin Mike went out, and by the time we put in at the CQ River and headed out, and we ended up about 3 miles out of the straits there, and we got to fish for maybe a half an hour of slack before the tide changed. Michael
and then you couldn't find bottom.
With a 4-pound lead. And it took me over an hour to pedal back up to my mark that my graph kept telling me was only 0.7 miles away. We took off and went, after we got Michael's fish taken care of, I was like, we got to go back. We were so far away, and the current is going. I think when we were just sitting there, I had a drift of like 4.25. It was crazy fast. So
you could be going 6 out there.
Yeah, that's what I heard. We were like, we got to go in, and we had to go. We went at an angle the whole way. We had to pedal to the east to get up to where we launched, and then when we were there, lo and behold, there were these rollers we had to get through. But the scary part about those things was they were only in a section, and they were still in 100 foot of water. Because it got so deep so fast. So it was like, if you dump out here, that's it. I don't even know if you can swim to the bank. Without a life jacket, you'd drowned. So we got through it. Nobody.
That's why we wear life jackets.
Yes, it
Jim.
is. No, yes, it is. But nobody flipped. But by gosh, it was. They were all but breaking. I mean, it was spooky, and that wasn't something we expected. But overall, it sounds like you had a great time, and I'm hoping that, you know, maybe we can get some more qualifying events up here in the Pacific Northwest, you know, kind of in every bit of competitive fishing, no matter whether you're a competitive bass angler, a competitive walleye angler, and this goes for boats and kayaks, any kind of competition. The Pacific Northwest is typically left out. Either they don't think we have the fish, or we get they're too far away. They're just too far for us to go. All of the big walleye trails back east, they know we have the Columbia River here. They know we have a trophy fishery here. We're catching more big fish that are over that 30-inch mark and closer to that 20-pound mark than all of the other states where they fish them all the time. They don't get near as many as we do, but we don't get any of those big trails because we're too far away. They won't draw their other guys. Same thing with the bass fishing. One time the BASS comes here and has a big tournament, our local guys wiped out all the pros. They just, because they're local.
Yeah.
You know, it's just hard. So we're kind of in our own little realm, locked away. The other events or other places will go to California and do all this, but they won't come to Oregon, Washington, or Idaho because we're just like in our own little thing. So it'd be really good to be able to see some kind of an event that would qualify an individual to give them the chance to go compete head to head with other anglers of their skill level and higher. I think that would be absolutely amazing. And not only that, I think it would get a lot of attention. We have some fantastic anglers here. We have some guys that I know could go head to head with the top guys in the world. I know they can. And if they don't know how to fish it, they're smart enough when they come to fishing that they would pick it up readily.
Definitely.
You know, it would be awesome to have that. So hopefully we can do that. I wished I was closer because, man,
Let me tell you, Jim, Shelter Cove is not that far away. And the species they're going after, you're very familiar with. Get in your car and go fish it. I think you'd have a really good chance.
I am gonna pay attention and see if I can see where they're gonna do that. And you know, I know some of the California guys and just talk to some people, and I would definitely want to go down there and give that a try. You're right, it's not that far away, especially if I could get some couple of guys to go along too. Now, with that said, how about, are you eligible to go next year, or do you guys got to qualify like everybody else, or how does that work?
So I believe the way it works is the top three placers in the event have a pass to the next season.
Okay.
Don't quote me on this. But also, interestingly, everybody because this is sponsored through U.S. Angling, everybody who is on this winning team is allowed a wild card entry into a couple of championship bass fishing events in the South. Oh yeah, killing you, isn't it, buddy?
I do not know why they are so. I'm probably completely off base here and completely wrong, but like, you've got the Hobie. The Hobie series that they do, and they have the Hobie Worlds that they just did here not too long ago. Yep. And a lot of those people they're the people that have won all of the bass fishing stuff. They're all the upper bass fishing individuals. To me, that's not even going after people that are fishing in saltwater. Maybe, of course, the Worlds, they don't always for, like, I think this year what they do, they fish for pike or something. You know, it is a multi-species thing, but it's not all. You know, I wish they would open the door basically to find different qualifying events other than just going after the bass fishing guys. But I assume that they do that because the kayak bass fishing is the biggest competitive sport in kayaking. You know, you don't hear nearly as much of the saltwater stuff. The sailfish one that's in Florida, we both have a friend, Howard Kirk, that did pretty good at that a couple of years ago. You know, they got that one. And then the Shelter Cove. And then, of course, our local ones. But if you're not local, you don't hear about those. They're not broadcast everywhere. All the other ones are that everybody hears from, like from the Hobie stuff. It is broadcasted everywhere. So it would just be cool if they would have a different type of qualifiers, I guess, instead of just being there for just the bass. With that said, then, would you try to qualify for it again?
So if there was a local tournament, absolutely. I'd be all over it. You know, I've got a lot of interests and a lot of different fisheries locally that I love to hit. So would I give up a week to go travel to Shelter Cove? No, I've been on a winning Team USA.
Yes,
I don't
you
need
have.
another
You've done it. You've been there and done it. Absolutely. That's the way I am a lot of times too. You know, one and done. You do it. You put your heart and soul into it, and then when you're done, you just kind of, you know what, I did that. I left on a good note. I think I'm good right now. I'm good with it. So for somebody, you know, like I don't know how you thought, but for me to qualify for something, man, that'd be the pinnacle pretty much of all competition fishing that there is to be able to go and do that. I mean, it's a pretty prestigious thing. That's pretty awesome. Do you have any like social media platforms or anything like that people can look you up?
Sure. I'll tell you though, most of my stuff is pretty dated. So when kayak fishing was about getting out on the water under your own power and chasing crazy fish in different venues, I was so passionate about it. I had to share it with everybody. I was doing seminars all the time, had a YouTube channel. Had a column in Northwest Sportsman. I was writing for other magazines, but and this is no slight to you, Jim, but when the focus went more towards putting motors on your kayaks and fishing bass tournaments, I lost that spark.
Yeah.
So I still put out a little content now and then. I wouldn't guide you anywhere because I'm not consistent on it. I have a YouTube channel. I've got my Facebook. One of the few people, I guess, anymore who has their Facebook completely unrestricted. I don't care who looks at what on there because just Mark fishing and doing stuff like that. I've got no consistent current content. I've got some fun videos on my YouTube channel, and there'll probably be a few more coming up soon.
Well, I do know that on your YouTube channel too, you might tell them what it is because I know like you have some really cool halibut fishing stuff on.
I got a little bit, actually. Yeah. So I don't do a whole lot of how-tos on YouTube.
I know, but it's just exciting to see somebody freaking stab one of those and the fight that goes on with it takes off your boat, and you know. You just don't pull those into a kayak. Catching one and reeling it in is half the situation or half the problem. Getting the thing on the kayak, that's a whole nother situation, and you better be ready or you're going to get your tail end kicked. So watching somebody that has done it several times, it's pretty interesting.
That's actually one of my favorite fish to catch, and I've got a couple of videos up there with fish between about 70 and maybe 90 pounds, and there was so much viewership of that and feedback and people wanting to chase them. I kind of felt the need to put out a video on how to do it right. What am I doing in that video, and how can you incorporate that? And if you've ever been to one of my seminars, you know that one of the primary things I keep on talking about is safety, how to stay safe while you're doing it. And when you're trying to land a fish that really could break your kayak in half, there's some protocol you've got to employ to make sure that you're safe.
Absolutely.
So I felt compelled to make that one. And actually, I'm pretty proud of that video. It's the only how-to I've done, and I really felt compelled to make it, but I was very satisfied once I put that out there.
So is your YouTube channel, just so people can just go look at him, is it just Mark Veary? Mark Veary, there you go. Just look up Mark Veary on YouTube. You can see some of his videos there. And then on Facebook, he's also Mark Veary on Facebook. And if you are local to the Pacific Northwest, chances are you already know Mark, but also, we have a lot of these great get-togethers where people go out and go fishing. We'll meet up at Hobuck. We'll meet up at Depot Bay or Pacific City or different places. And so,
or Richland.
Yeah, or Richland, Oregon. Yeah, for the crappie shootout, which is an amazing thing. So much fun. What's your next trip? You're going to go, what's the next thing you're going to go chase for?
So I'm going to stick local. My next trip, I'm going to hit one of the tributaries on the Columbia and get some salmon. And this time of year, I've got a process I follow. I go to the ocean, I catch them in the ocean. I go to the estuaries and I catch them in the estuaries, and then I follow them up the Columbia River.
Yes, I've seen some great photos of you with some really nice fish like a buoy tan and different places. I myself as well, I will be in one of the estuaries, the same one you're going to be at. Hopefully I'll see you down there next weekend, and then I'll also be there the weekend after again too. So hopefully what I want to be able to do is to talk to people after we do a fishing trip and then try to convey an experience and show that people that are just average anglers like ourselves, that they can go do these things that they've always said, oh, hey, I wished I could do that, or I wonder if I could do that, to just prove to them that you can do that. And by sharing our experiences and maybe a little bit of what we're doing, I want to convey that experience to the listeners so they can come out and do the same thing if they want to, whether it's apply it at their own or just go ahead and give them that little extra push to want to come in. And I've always thought about being in a kayak. I'm not sure about it. Well, then, hey, I'm going to try it now kind of thing.
Right.
I'll be up there this weekend. I got a bass tournament to run on a Soyuz Lake, and I am going to do a little bit of sockeye fishing on the Brewster Pool tomorrow morning. And then I'm also going to do some kokanee fishing for some exceptionally big kokanee on Palmer Lake Saturday evening and Sunday morning early, and then skedaddle home, hopefully beat all the hot temperatures. Mark, I want to thank you for talking to me. It's such an incredible thing to be able to know somebody that has done and got to be on such a prestigious, situation. A lot of people maybe think nothing about it, but to me, that's huge. It's huge. And it's pretty awesome.
Thanks, man. And thanks for having me on your show.
Oh man, I super appreciate it. I can't wait to get this one out there. Like I said, I know there's a lot of people that are anxiously awaiting. They all want to know. You're going to have a pile of questions from everybody. I do have, just so you guys know, I do have a webpage that should be coming online here pretty soon. You will be able to leave comments. You'll be able to see merch. You'll be able to see some of the events that I have either going to do or participate in. If you wanted to participate some, I'm going to even post up some of the get-togethers that we do, like if we go to Hobuck. Be watching for that. I'll hopefully that is up and going here very soon. We've been working on it for about 2 months now. Hope to get that up real soon. I want to thank everybody that's listened in and stayed in this long, because this is a long one. I want to thank everybody for being here. Give the podcast, if you would, a follow and a like. And you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. The Bait and Banner podcast is on about 8 different platforms. And unfortunately, I don't know them all by heart, but those will be posted up on the Facebook page here soon. All right. Again, Mark, thank you very much for talking with me, and appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Thank you.
All right, guys. Till next time, tight lines.